Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, Square Wave 2. As many of you know, I usually have a nice old shortwave radio to show you, something we affectionately call boat anchors, or at least I have a construction project of one sort or another. But none of that today, because the topic of today's video is death and the spirit world, a unique and different perspective. Death and the spirit world are very controversial subjects, very mysterious subjects. They've been addressed by all the religions and many of the major philosophers, including one workshop philosopher, namely yours truly. I'll tell you what I mean. When I was a teenager and when I was a young man, I was simply fascinated by psychology, parapsychology, and especially by philosophy. I spent many long hours pondering the great questions. What is the meaning of life? Where did we come from? And what would happen to us, if anything, after our death? And perhaps morbidly so, I was very curious about how the elderly viewed their impending doom, their eventual death, which came closer and closer day by day, inexorably. Were they frightened? Did they simply accept death as a normal part of the life cycle and nothing to worry about? Were they in denial? Or did they try to comfort themselves with visions of being reunited with family, friends, and loved ones in some heavenly hereafter? Well, now I find that I am indeed a senior citizen. It took me 73 years to get here, but I'm here now, and I feel that I'm in a much better position to answer some of the big questions. After 73 years of observation and cogitation, I am absolutely convinced that our state post-mortem is exactly equivalent to our state pre-conception. In other words, a state of non-existence, if non-existence can be called a state. Now, no matter how hard we hope for it and search for it, there's absolutely no evidence of a life in the hereafter. And faith is not evidence. My grandson has faith in Santa Claus, and where will that get him? In a sense, death is returning us to a previous state or a previous condition before conception. In other words, we have all been there before. Now, although we don't look forward to going there, there is really nothing to fear. It's more or less a return. When you stop to think about it, death is no more disquieting than the fact that both you and I were conceived with the union of two microscopic cells. How bizarre is this? Our physical bodies are mostly made up from four elements: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. The fact that a living, moving, breathing, sentient human being can be created from a handful of inert elements is so fantastic, so profound, so incredible, so unbelievable, that we just have to make up some explanation for it. We are compelled to do this. Hence, the intelligent design theory, the creator theory, and the God theory. After all, if something exists, it must have had a creator, right? For instance, this workbench behind me, I was the creator. It did not suddenly appear from nowhere. I built it myself with my own hands from existing materials. If there is a universal creator or a God, one might well ask, where did the creator come from? Who created the creator? Believers, of course, will tell us that God, the creator, is eternal. He has always existed, and he will always exist. Now, by saying this, they are conceding that something can indeed exist without having a creator. I don't mean to imply that there is no spiritual world, but I prefer to call it the metaphysical world or the mental world because it is only accessed through thought. It has nothing to do with religious dogma or a life in the hereafter. You may be surprised to learn what does exist in this mental world. Well, universal constants, universal principles, and universal laws. For instance, in mathematics, the Pythagorean theorem. In physics, the inverse square law. And if you're into electronics, Ohm's law and Lenz's law, I equals ER. These laws are truly universal. They are constant. They have always existed. They had no creator. They had no inventor. Thomas Edison was once asked where he got his wonderful ideas from, and he had a great answer. Edison said simply, ideas are in the air. And indeed, how many more ideas are in the air waiting to be discovered? Remember, at one time, the principles of radio transmission were unknown, meaning undiscovered. Although the principles themselves had always existed, were truly eternal, had no beginning, no end, no creator. What other wonderful principles await our discovery? Perhaps principles and laws which will permit teleportation. Sound fantastic? Not really. Remember, just a few years ago, the idea of sending a color motion picture along with audio through the air to a distant point was only a dream for madmen, something that couldn't possibly happen. And sure enough, we take it for granted today. Each one of us has a collection of metaphysical attributes. These attributes are displayed through our personalities, our intellects, our actions, and our interactions with fellow human beings. These highly individual sets of attributes identify each one of us uniquely among all the human beings on the planet Earth, past, present, and future. One of my very first jobs as a young man was as a nursing assistant in a convalescent hospital. You might call it an old folks' home. We had a 90-year-old patient named Carl Fisk. He was a retired farmer from Peabody, Kansas. He was such a sweet old man. He was everybody's favorite patient. Whenever a staff member would give Carl the least bit of assistance, Carl would respond by saying, "Thank you, dear. Thank you, dear." And Carl really meant that too. One morning I arrived at work and I was told that Carl had expired during the night, and that my teacher was going to show me how to prepare a body for the mortician. What a way to start the day. Well, I wasn't too anxious to see a body. I had never seen one before, but I went ahead. When we entered Carl's room, I saw something lying motionless in Carl's bed, but it was not human. It was no more human than the bed itself or any other piece of furniture in the room. I remember having this impression very clearly. I stared into the face of the corpse, but it was hardly recognizable as Carl Fisk. Indeed, Carl had departed. Now, of course, all Carl's attributes, which are not of a physical nature, could not be destroyed. Perhaps they still existed in the air, along with Edison's ideas. Now, whether Carl's attributes maintained their unity and their identity in some other world, and whether he could communicate with other beings in that world, or with us in our world, is really a moot point. However, common sense tells me that this does not happen. I hate to sound too much like Woody Allen, but I guess I'm just an atheist existentialist. And of course, I do frequent the Happy Carrot health food store every chance I get. See the movie Sleeper for a footnote. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.